to the Lost Sheep Found podcast. I'm your host, Carrie. This is part 2 of Susan's story, so if you haven't listened to part 1, go back and listen now. We hope you enjoy this Q&A episode.
On my knees, I got my arms stretched to the sky. Trouble to the left of me.
Well, now that you've heard Susan's story, I just want to say how lucky we are that we have Susan live in person.
Hello.
And we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into your story, if that's okay.
That's totally okay.
Okay, perfect. You had a tough childhood growing up.
Yes, I did.
And living with your grandma, was she religious? I know you've written us a story about your grandmother.
Yes.
But did you guys go to church all the time with her?
No. The problem is that she was raised Catholic, but by the time I lived with her, we couldn't afford to even go to church. So we didn't have a car. We had to walk everywhere. And going to church was expensive. My cousins, they went through the whole communion and all of that. We couldn't afford that. That cost money. So no, we didn't go to church, but she did mention the Lord every single day. And my auntie next door, she also, would make me pray before meals, things like that. Or I remember this painting on her wall that had, I think it's called the guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
And this angel that is guarding 2 children across a bridge. And so I remember just staring at that, and I would just be like, wow, this is beautiful. So little things like that, but nothing like going to church, no Bible reading, nothing like that. No.
I don't know if this is, I just totally forgot something so significant in my bedroom, because I was raised by my grandma and we didn't go to church or anything, but I totally forgot that there was a picture of Jesus and Mary above my bed like for 10 years.
Really?
And that just brought me back, because I stared at that every night and every day, and it I didn't have a huge connection, but it just totally brought me back to that moment that I had totally forgotten, which just totally relevant.
So Jesus and Mary was above your bed.
Yeah. And those little things I feel like are little things that carry you to a bigger picture in your own relationship.
Yes.
And it takes so many times to probably get you to that, but I just remember that visually in my head. It's crazy. So just being able to have her mention and do the prayers and all that gave you obviously some peace or hope or love or comfort.
I don't know what it was back then. I do remember her teaching us the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. It wasn't often, and it wasn't very every day, but I remember knowing it. I forgot it in Spanish, most of it, but I guess it was peaceful. I don't remember how I felt in those moments, but because it came from my grandmother, and because she was so loyal and kind and loving towards me, that became the connection between, I guess, religion and love.
Until you saw religion through your mom's experience.
That was different. Totally different. Because then I moved in with my mother, and she wasn't religious. But my oldest aunt in the family, her oldest sister, she had started going to church. And they had, even though their church was, they had prophets or whatever in their church, still the Lord used it. And this prophet couple came to our house, and my mother was ready to receive the Lord. And they said the Lord's Prayer, and then we started going to church. Or not the Lord's Prayer, but, the Salvation Prayer. And we started going to church, and it was different from there.
Yeah. The guest yesterday she read the Salvation Prayer during the interview.
Oh.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah.
No.
So when you moved back in with your mom, what age were you at that point?
I was around 9-10 years old. I remember it was 3rd grade, so I had to leave my 3rd grade classroom to go to 3rd grade in this area.
District.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you had mentioned in the story your mom had a big house.
Yes.
And was with someone that had won the lottery and a lot of money. And then she started going to church, and he was like, I'm not going to be a part of this.
Oh, yeah. as soon as she mentioned, oh, they came to my house and I'm a believer now, he didn't want anything to do with it. But I also think there's another reason why he left. So it was that, and also I think I scared him because he was starting to try and move to abusing my sister. And I said, and as soon as I realized that he was going to abuse my sister, that's when I finally found my voice. And I said, if you do that, I'm going to tell my mom. And so that connected with my mom starting to go to church. It freaked him out, and he left shortly after.
And you said they had come to your door, and that's how your mom chose. Was that Christian? Was that?
Yeah, it was a Christian church, but it was my aunt's church leaders. They came to her. She brought them to her. I spoke with my aunt a couple months ago, and she told me that my mother had actually called her one day hysterical and had told her things like, I see demons behind the Virgin Mary image. I see them and I'm going crazy, and I'm ready to receive Jesus. And so that's when my oldest aunt took that opportunity to come with her elder leaders to our home and introduce my mother to Jesus.
And she went to that church that those...
No,
Oh,
it was far away.
Okay.
So we went to our own church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in your story, as you mentioned, then, I mean, she kind of turned at that point, right? Was that kind of also like...
Yeah, it was all crazy because she was coming to the Lord. Yeah. But then we went to a church that was super legalistic. So that didn't help. It helped, but didn't. The Lord uses crazy things, crazy churches sometimes with crazy people. But in my mom's life, that was helping. But at the same time, she was going through, that man leaving her, being a single mom with 5 kids. Now she has to pay. This house wasn't paid for. So she had to pay. I don't think she even graduated high school. I'm pretty sure of it, actually. She didn't graduate high school. It was very stressful. So all of these, juggling all these things together, it turned her into multiple personalities.
That's crazy, because you did mention, like, before she went to this church and when she had found this man, she was like Susie Homemaker and like sewing things. And it's been, I would be like, this is like the perfect mom.
Yeah.
And now you're going to go to church. Oh, yay. And then it was like, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. It actually was worse than when she didn't go to church,
That's crazy to me. Seeing that when she did start going to church and her change in behavior and stuff, how were you feeling about religion at that point? I mean, I know at some points you said it was like a refuge for you, but did you connect like religion to like her behavior?
Not at all.
Okay.
I was, a child, so I was like around 11 when I accepted Jesus at that church. I loved the little classroom setting, the little songs, the little Bible stories. I was immediately just drawn to all of that from the beginning. And I think from a kid, I was being just molded by the Holy Spirit to kind of be attracted to all of this, because out of all my siblings, I'm the oldest of 5. I was the one that was immediately attached to it, immediately drawn to it, and probably stuck with it the most out of all of my siblings.
And didn't say like, if this is how religion is, or if this is what religion caused my mom to be, like, I don't want to be a part of it.
No.
Something in her.
It's so hard to go back with your child mind, right?
Yeah.
Also, because you don't have so much to reflect on, but like she could have been having mental problems with seeing demons as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she could have,
I'm sure of it.
Definitely wasn't the religion that brought her out of it, but it wasn't identified that she had some mental problems, because physically abusing is definitely definitely have some emotional mental problems.
And I personally saw my mom at one point being prayed over already as a Christian. So I was probably like 17, 16, and I saw the elders praying for her, and I saw her demon tormented. I saw her, having those throwing herself on the floor in those convulsions. And it was real because
Wow.
my mother would not pretend that.
Yeah.
So I know that she was tormented, or she still is actually to this day.
And you know
Yeah.
where she is?
Yes, she lives with one of my brothers,
Okay.
but my brothers don't really accept who she is. In other words, they don't admit that she needs help, and that doesn't help because she doesn't ever get help. And only my sister and I, we're the oldest two, we see that she needs help and that she needs to see somebody to get help, but she won't. She refuses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the tough thing with mental illness. I mean, as long as you're not taken from the state, you have a choice of how you want to live your life. And even if you know, I mean, my dad's homeless in San Diego walking the streets, you know, and there's been so many times that our family's tried to get him help and he just runs from it. So, you know, there's nothing you can do. And to get someone like committed is like almost impossible, you know?
I remember when you were supposed to go down to San Diego.
And he never
and
showed
he
up.
never showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to actually see a vision is pretty intense.
Yeah, at
you
10.
know?
Yeah, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't know what to do with it. And besides, I was living in this crazy world with crazy mom and her boyfriend, so I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't see my grandmother anymore, and so I was just a kid. And so when I saw it again at 25, and not saw it again, but I heard, when I heard those stories, I thought that was it, and I was so excited. I was like, that was me. I saw that man. Like, they're seeing it. You know, so it was exciting.
Like you weren't the only one.
Yeah, I wasn't the only one, and it was a thing. There was a reason behind it, that experience.
Yeah.
You know?
And as your relationship progressed or as you grew older with being with your mom, and obviously she's having some serious problems and taking it out on you, how did that finally kind of stop? Like,
Well, I remember one time, for example, the violence kind of stopped when I stood up to her one time. You know, she would hit me and beat me, and finally around 15 is when I said hit me, and I what is that called, challenged her, and I said hit me, and I was ready to hit her back because I was just so fed up with it. And that is when she realized, like, oh dang, you know, my daughter can actually hurt me if I keep this up, right? So that part of the abuse kind of stopped there until I was 17 and she beat the crap out of me again. But for the emotional part, that just kept going because she is very good at being two-faced, even to this day. She'll be and say one thing to us, and then to family she'll say something completely different and call us liars. And so that hasn't changed. The spiritual part is crazy because the few times that we have been friends for a short period of time throughout my adult life, it's so great because she knows the Bible and she reads the Bible and she can recite scripture, and she volunteers at her church all the time. She's active. She loves it. She goes all the time. And that's part of what I inherited from her, is that I'm that way. Like, I love church. I love to serve. I love my Bible. I love to sing, blah, blah, blah. That's her too. I love to help people. I remember we were teenagers and we would always pick up people. My mom had a van for all of us, and we would always pick up more unfortunate, less fortunate families that didn't have cars. We'd take them to church in our van, just pack them in. So that kind of heart, I feel like I saw that and I became that part of her. But the other part is the part where she doesn't really live out what she studies the scripture, or they just don't teach right in the churches that she goes to. They don't teach like what it really means. You know, they teach kind of like, oh, topical, or this can mean this, or it's not historical facts. It's, you know, how we in our church, we learn, our pastors are trained, like they know what they're talking about. They know history, they know Hebrew, you know, they know Greek, all of that, but not the churches that I grew up in, and not the churches that my mom has been to. So they can twist it and make it their own, and make it super phony, and it's like, God. But nevertheless, we could relate a lot of times spiritually because we both have that fire. But then when it comes to being real and those real moments, no, it's not really there. There's no substance.
Or being a mother.
Or being a mother.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, in the day to day, you don't have that bond or connection. It's only in theory.
Yes.
She doesn't have the serving heart with you guys.
Not with us.
Yeah.
No, not with us.
How hard to see like her give everything of herself to these strangers.
Oh yeah.
And you're like,
and the Lord
hi.
uses her.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Lord uses her at work to bring, people to Christ and everything. That's why I'm a firm believer of God uses the people. The people don't have to be perfect or anything.
Yeah.
God uses,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the podcast.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can we get your mom in here for a minute? No, I'm
I
joking.
wish. Oh, I wish. That would be great.
I'm joking. So
a fun part of the story. Go ahead.
no, you go.
Meeting your husband was a cute story. But
I
being
did not realize
homeless
that.
and living in your car, like that's
Yeah.
bold.
Yeah.
That's why when
super
you
cool.
sent me that story, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Susan has lived a life.
Yeah. No, and my husband, it's even shocking on his side because he was wealthy, had everything,
Yeah.
didn't work, didn't have a car, had everything handed down to him. So for him to leave all of that for me was beautiful and scary. Like I have to take care of him now. Like
Yeah.
why? Why
Yeah.
did he leave? You know?
Because he loved you.
Yeah.
His mother actually took all of his, because he's a basketball player, took all of his basketball shorts and cut them to pieces
She's
During
like
that time.
because of me.
Wow.
Yeah, to punish him.
Asian mother, though.
Yeah,
like,
Asian
is
mother.
tiger mom? Is she a
Yeah.
tiger mom?
I'm not sure what that is. What's a tiger?
It's like the very strict Asian parent. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Like,
With get straight A's and
It's more her dad. The mom would cover more for him,
mm-hmm.
but the mom is like the dad in the sense of status.
Mhm.
Our status has to look good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she didn't graduate high school either,
Mm-hmm.
but they worked very hard to be where they're at now.
Yeah.
They came from Vietnam. My father-in-law was a Vietnam veteran, and he deflected to the American side, and they knew nothing, came with nothing, and they made themselves wealthy and civil engineer, and went to high school with an English book in one hand and the Vietnamese book in the other.
Wow.
And just did it all. In their eyes, they did everything themselves. So for them to have a child like my husband who has an easy life
Yeah.
and is more American, it's very hard for them
Yeah.
to put those two together.
I think that's happened with a lot of immigrant families.
Yeah.
Because they do come here and hustle.
Yes.
And then the kids that are born here, easy life.
Easy.
But they must have come to some turn when they allowed you to come live with them. They must have
yeah.
thought, if we're going to have a relationship with our son, we have to
Exactly.
accept this.
Yes.
And they did at some point until
Until the ex-girlfriend.
the ex-girlfriend, and then you couldn't come home if there was
Yeah.
a man courting his sister, right?
Yeah, could not come home.
That's crazy. I would have
that
been
what-
like, ding dong. Hi.
I know, right?
But in the same respect, you were happy to be in a house where everyone's getting along and having family dinners. So you're like, this is nice. I don't want to mess it up. I guess I'll
Yeah.
stay away for a couple hours.
Yeah, they were
right?
my idols for a while.
Yeah.
They were
That made me kind of cry because that's what I love. I even wrote it like family meals heart because I grew up having family meals. We would wait till my dad got home. He would work longer hours in the summer because he was a car mechanic, and we would wait, but we would always have family meals. And that's one thing that I've always said about my family. I'm like, we do family meals. Sometimes we don't. It's hard when Andrew's working and it's just the three of us. I'm like, come on, boys. This is where we talk, but I love that connection.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up in high school, my friends would come over. I'm like, okay, we're going to eat dinner. They're like, oh, where are we going? I'm like,
home.
we have,
home.
yeah, my mom or my dad made dinner, and they don't eat dinner as a family. I find that so sad.
So going through when you moved in with it was your boyfriend at the time, right? They let you share a room.
Yeah. They let me share a room, but they were at this point non-practicing Catholics, but they were super strict. I remember one time going to get my ears pierced, because I grew up super, strict too. So when I first married my husband, I didn't even know who Britney Spears was. Like, that's how bad it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I grew up super sheltered from the world.
Yeah.
But when I moved into his house, they were strict too. I remember putting, piercing up higher in my ear, an extra piercing, coming home, and my mother-in-law and father-in-law walk into their bedroom, and they come out 5 minutes later, and my mother-in-law says to me, Dad does not want you to be a bad example to your younger siblings, your in-laws, so you have to take it off. They were super strict too in that sense. Like, no, they couldn't really listen to much music or watch many movies, which in hindsight, that's probably a good thing. But,
and they accepted you and let you sleep in the same room, which would be totally something that would be not strict, right? But you couldn't have an earring in your ear.
Yes.
And then.
But the mother-in-law did about a few weeks later, like 3 weeks, a month later, she did talk to us and say, well, since you guys are living together, why don't you guys get married?
Okay.
So in that sense, they were strict. Like, they cared about what the family thought. They somehow probably felt that it wasn't right in the sight of God. So they did encourage us to get married.
Okay.
And we were like, fine.
Yeah.
This is what we want.
It's like the same thing as being boyfriend and girlfriend, right?
Exactly.
How old were you? 18?
18 years
Yeah, it's just
old.
a piece of paper, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Susan, that is crazy.
I know. And you're still together.
Still together.
That's amazing. That is a true testament.
When I found
of
out
love
when I found out her age, because somebody, maybe you said, like, oh, we've been together for 20 something years.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
You only look like you're 25.
gosh.
One.
Yeah. No.
And
It was hard because you grow up together and you're like siblings,
yeah,
because you don't know anything. You're still growing
you're
and learning and
you're learning to adult
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
and figuring out who you are,
Exactly.
what you believe.
Oh yeah. And we're super different from culturally and everything. So
Well, figuring out who you are, you have to figure out who you are separately, but together.
yes.
Right?
Yeah. And how has that been? What's kept you together?
I always say Jesus.
Yeah.
Because nothing else. All of our family members or friends that have kind of similar stories, none of them are together anymore, because it's very hard these days to be married young with a lot of trials, and then not knowing Jesus or not staying close to him. It's almost impossible.
Well, then in your story, you said, coming from the church, which was not 100% because your mom kind of tainted that. And then you found a new group of friends that were Christians. Was it Saddleback?
Saddleback
or
College.
like on the grass, and
Yeah.
they invited you over?
Yes. That
The
was
freaks,
beautiful
the
time.
weirdos, did you call them?
It kind of embarrassed me, to be honest, because like everyone's walking by like, ew, get away, and you want to be cool too.
So when you found that group, was your husband on board right away?
Not really. I mean, he didn't really oppose to anything. He's always been a very mellow personality. He just doesn't really oppose to what I suggest or anything like that.
Okay. So tell us a little bit of what happens next after meeting the new group.
Okay. Yeah, after meeting the new group, I felt like this is what I've been missing. I am getting more and more restless at home with the in-laws and not happy. I can see how they've been trying to treat me the same, but it's not the same. Like, I remember early on going in and thinking, oh my goodness, I have a mom and a dad now for real, and I'm one of them, right? Well, I didn't know that the daughter-in-law had to do a lot more work than the daughters. Like, you have to help more and you have to clean more. And even if the daughters don't do chores, you still have to do it. You're expected to, and you should do it, and little things like that where I started realizing, no, I'm not exactly accepted like a daughter, And so I began searching. And so when I found this group, I was reminded of the truth, like the thing that really lasts, the substance, and that it was God, that it was spiritual, and that I didn't have it and I needed it,
Okay.
Yeah.
So during the time at college and everything, I know at one point you said you had still kept in contact with some people from the original church. Were you still in contact with people from that church at that point, or had you totally...
No, at this point when I had started going back to church hopping, no, I did not connect with anybody. However, the man that I was dating for a little bit, the one that was 7 years older than me, he was still a family friend. Because most of my family, not most of it, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of my uncles and my mother went to that church that I grew up in. So they were friends with that ex-boyfriend. So I would hear about him every now and then. I never saw him again, thankfully. But other than that, no, not really. I didn't really keep in touch with anybody. Just through social media, eventually you start connecting again. But no, I didn't. Actually, once or twice, I did meet up with childhood friends from that church, and we went to, I think it was like Knott's or Six Flags or something, but not really. Most of the kids I grew up with are not Christians anymore.
Oh. Which is sad, because it's like, did that church cause that separation?
Oh, yeah. There was a lot that came out of that church that, you know, because in a lot of places where there's a lot of legalism, there's a lot of secrets too.
Yeah.
And it's actually worse than what they appear to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with, like, listening to Amanda's story and, like, how they dealt with her, you know, dad's sexual abuse and stuff. And it's like, how can churches do this?
Yeah.
I don't
There
understand
should be, I don't know, is it just left up to the board members of each church versus, like, the bigger picture? I don't know.
Yeah, because we kind of were talking about it before you came. Like, how do they get away with Like, it just doesn't make sense.
I guess it's, again, free will and freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. And if people are going to believe, they're going to believe what these people are saying, whether if it's fact or not. But
but some of these people are being turned away from religion because of how these churches are operating.
Again, though, what we have seen a connection as those churches that have, you know, left a bad taste in your mouth for religion, per se, like, what we've seen is that they haven't had that personal connection with Jesus. It's learning the Bible or reciting scripture or look this way and read this and then everything's fine. But we haven't had a case where they've had a personal connection with God. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. So, like, you were saying your mom could quote scripture and everything, but did she have that personal connection?
Probably not, because I would say if you did, you would have the Holy Spirit
convicting and you wouldn't
right?
have treated you the way she treated you. And
still now to
Yeah.
this day.
yeah, so you can learn the script. That's why I don't have scripture memorized.
Nice.
No excuses. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so as you continue your journey as a married couple in the house, finding religion, what's the next step for yourself? And
So the next step for myself, shortly after that, we moved out of my in-laws' house, and we got our first own apartment, and all the struggles of the finances and all of that, and then our in-laws still having my in-laws still having a lot of influence in our lives, such as finish school first and no children until you get a degree, blah blah blah. And so what happened to us was that I had to go back to school to work full time to support him to go to school full time. And then it took him about 13 years to get a degree, to finally stick with a thing. Because, again, I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of Asian parents, and probably not just Asian, but a lot of the Asian parents, they want their kids to be doctors,
Right.
lawyers, engineers, blah, blah, blah. And my father-in-law is a civil engineer, so he wanted his oldest son, to follow in his footsteps. But my husband, of course, was going the opposite of that. But he did try. He tried to please his dad and tried all sorts of engineering, structural, electrical, every engineering. Until in one of these classes, he was in a computer class, and that's when he said, "This is me. This is what I wanted." But his dad would discourage him from that as a kid. His dad gave him a computer to fix up and connect on his own, and he was able to do that. But then when it came for him expressing, I want to go this route, his dad would say, no, that's going nowhere, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that. So it was only what he wanted. And because of that, I think it took us or him a long time to finally say, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to stick with.
To speak up on his own. Yeah.
So it took us a long time, like 13 years, to finally know what you want and finally go towards that degree. And throughout those years, I was working. I worked at a company for 16 and a half years.
Wow.
A civil engineering company, actually, where my father-in-law still works to this day. I was just, very, very loyal to him getting his degree, and then over time I thought, I don't really want to go back to school after he's done. And I don't want to go to another job, but I'm kind of tired of this one too. And, I've moved to different departments and I don't feel like there's anywhere else I want to go. And I've reached what I want to do here. And I was becoming more and more desperate again. And I knew in my heart of hearts, like, I've always wanted to be a mom, always, and then, Carrie, part of my story is I couldn't become a mom.
Oh.
Yeah, I was infertile for at least 3 years that I know of, because probably longer. I mean, I never got pregnant. And that was a different journey, a hard journey. And then we became pregnant finally.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm. And I was able to become a stay-at-home mom, like I always wanted, all my life, pretty much.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So with the church hopping, I'm going to go back. Sorry.
Okay. No worries.
With the church hopping, how many churches did you guys go to, or did you just go to that one?
No, I remember going to maybe 2 or 3 churches before we found this one.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I did not like it. I was like,
You're like, people are wearing tight, ripped jeans.
Yeah, and spaghetti straps, and no. The lights, this is too showy, too flashy.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is not godly at all.
I mean, I feel the same. I know we already talked about that. Like, I like worship. I don't need it to be a full-blown, like, concert. Like, I do want some pep in it, but I don't need a light show or anything. I don't need to have my ears blown out. But I am comfortable going in a sweatshirt. So,
well, now I am too. But, the Lord slowly worked through all of that in me.
Yeah.
And it helped me. And it helped that my husband loved it right away.
Yeah.
And he allowed for us to go, even though his family wasn't religious.
Yeah.
And they still aren't to this day. They don't even go to the Catholic Church.
They don't.
They haven't for decades. So it worked out for us. Yeah.
So is there any aha or goosebump moments along the way that Jesus was in your life or God was in your life to that either lightened some hardship or you knew he was there? I know you had your vision, but like just kind of along the way, like for him to take 13 years to get a degree, you're working at a company for 16 years, you're going to church, right? You're
trying to have a baby.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah. Was there any just moments that maybe stand out that you were on the journey that was your purpose and gave you meaning?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because at this company that I worked for, I started in this department and I ended up working in that department for 10 years. And in this department, my supervisor was an atheist and my boss was a lesbian. And so I knew that they knew that I was a Christian. And I spoke to them about Jesus. Like, the Lord would give me boldness at this company to speak to managers about the Lord. Like, I had access because I was the mail girl at one point. So I would go to everyone's desk, everyone's inbox, and
You're like, God bless you. Here's
God
your
bless,
mail.
Like, I would literally stop at people's office and just talk and then talk about their families and everything. And then the Lord would just use me. And later on, I'd be like, what just happened? But I was just in there for half an hour talking to this Buddhist about the Lord, and like, I saw a lot of things like that. A lot of prayers answered. Like, one time I remember I was craving Rice Krispie treats, and I knew this one department that always had food, right? And I was walking towards it, and I was like, oh, Lord, just please. if they could just have Rice Krispie treats. And they did. I was like, Lord. Another time, I remember, this happened to me maybe 2 or 3 times. I would go to my car. I didn't know that I had thyroid issues, that I had the hypothyroid. Yeah, so I wasn't taking medication, and I would be very tired during my breaks, and I would have to go to my car and sleep. And I remember I would go to my car often to sleep for like 10, 15 minutes, and I would tell the Lord, I'm so tired. Please just wake me up in like 13 minutes. So then I have 2 minutes to walk back, And maybe twice I heard birds chirping like as if they were on my window. And then another time I heard, Susan. And so I just knew, like, this is the Lord. He's with me. Yeah. He's here. He's providing for me everything that I need, even in the little tiny details, like that. So
he's tricky.
Yeah.
He is tricky. Well, I do know, and I have to thank you for this, because when I was leading one of the women's groups, and I was trying to encourage everybody, let's do a morning prayer session, at the beach. What time was it? 7?
8 or 7.
It was 7:38, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone was complaining how early it was. I'm like, whatever. It's one day. Yeah. Like, give me a break, people. Yeah. Susan was the only one that showed up.
Aww.
We went to Salt Creek. We sat down on the beach, and it was the most spiritual thing I had ever done. We sat there for like an hour, I think, just praying. Yeah. And I remembered that night before, you had a problem. You guys got a flat tire.
That was awesome.
Yeah. The flat tire, and you were showing me the video and
the pictures.
Yes. Yeah. Just crazy. But I remember, I have a thing with praying. I don't feel I'm a very good prayer, but I'm like, I'm going to try this. I'm just going to sit there and pray whatever comes to mind. And it totally flowed. It was the weirdest thing. I would love to do it again. I don't want to do it by myself. But nobody wants to get up that early.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to the church I grew up in, because as crazy as it was, things that they taught me that ingrained in me were things like that. Like, you read your Bible, you wait through a 3.5-hour service, you go to church.
That's a little crazy there.
People still think that. But see, to me, it's like, it's no big deal. It's like you just do these things. And so, I still struggle with legalism to this day because of that. But
and when you say legalism, explain that?
Sure. Legalism is something that you make it to be what God is saying, but it's not really what God is saying. It's what you tell people that God is saying, or that's what God wants. But it could just be something for you, a conviction for you, but it doesn't apply to everybody else. But you make it as if it were. And so if I, go to church, 3 times a week and somebody else doesn't, then I could say, well, they're not being godly. Or I remember also a lot in high school growing up and just feeling like, oh, those kids, they're sinning and I am so good. Just that sense of you're good, entitlement, and you're holy and all of that, but it's a bunch of baloney, because it's really a lot of insecurities and fears and
ego.
Ego.
Hi, Carrie here. And on Christianity.com, it says a legalist believes that their good works and obedience to God affects their salvation. Legalism focuses on God's laws more than relationship with God. It keeps external laws without a truly submitted heart. And legalism adds human rules to divine laws and treats them as divine. The Pharisees would be an example of this in the Bible.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, what I love about listening to your story as it played was kind of your initial doubt of if you want this to go live. And then it was so beautiful to hear you go through the story. And then at the end, you're like, if this helps someone, it can be out there.
Yeah.
And she sent me the story, and I listened to it, and she's like, I haven't finished it yet. And I'm like, she's like, but she doesn't want to share it. And I'm like, you haven't got to the end. I think she might be open to it. She's like, don't tell me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So it was just neat just to see that full
the progression
and the processing of it.
Well, and the change of when you met Joseph. Like your voice and everything totally lightened
Yes.
and just it all changed.
Yes.
And it like warmed me up. I was like, there's the change.
Because it brought value to everything that I had been through. And it's like, this didn't happen for nothing. Like, God, you had a purpose, as ugly as it was. And me going to a brand new school, my senior year in high school, my husband was there, and you knew that, you know, and he wasn't a Christian, but he was still the one, and God knew that the one that I was going to choose. So, I also changed my mind because a lot of people in my family, and my mom's side of the family, that's huge. I don't know my dad's side of the family, but they don't really know my story. I've lived with a few of them and, done life throughout the years with a few of them, but they don't really ask. I don't really say. They see the weirdness in my mom, and a lot of parties, we end up in the same place, but we don't talk to each other and it's awkward, But nobody really sits down and asks me what is happening or what happened. If anything, my uncles, her brothers, will call me and say, you should be doing this. Why aren't you doing this? Like, I remember one time my mom was at the hospital. She had a small heart attack, and she was with this crazy husband of hers that she met a crazy time, and he went to jail and became a pastor, but it was a lie. Anyway, she was with this crazy man that wasn't working. And she was at the hospital, and she was asking my uncles for money, and my uncles called me and said, why aren't you giving your mother money? And I go, are you kidding me? I have lived with my mother. I know what she does with money. I know how she misuses it, does not use it never used it for the kids growing up. She would let people borrow it at church, give it away. I mean, she still to this day gets money from these men that she had children with, and
Gives it to the church?
Well, I'm currently going through something right now where after 40 years, my dad is finally paying his child support this year.
Stop.
No, I'm not kidding. He's paying
Give
child
it up to
support
the courts for going back and really
because he always worked under the table so that he wouldn't have to pay. He had this fight against my mom and was, determined that he would not give that money to her, and they were both selfish in their own ways. Yeah, but now because he started his own business, they're like, we caught you, we know where you are now, and now he's having to pay it, and he's trying to get my mom to give me money. Do you think she's going to share that money? No way. She's not sharing it.
Well, if she's getting that money, then why would you need to give her money?
And why are your brothers giving her money?
Exactly.
Be like, why are you giving her money?
I don't even know if they know that she's getting money.
How are your siblings? If you're the oldest of 5, I am also. How are the younger?
Not well. I don't talk to my 3 youngest siblings, the 3 boys. There's been a lot there, but my sister is my only sibling that I speak with, and we're both Christians. She lives in Utah though, so I don't see her much. We FaceTime and all, but we don't ever see each other hardly. We struggle. My sister's the only one that's, I guess, stable financially. She has this nice home in Utah, farmland and all of that. So 1, 2, 3. The third brother, he's pretty good too, and he and his wife have good jobs, and they go to their Catholic church and all.
But he was the one that helped your mom.
No, I'm sorry. You're right. That's the 4th brother. So the 3rd one is a really, really messed up one.
Okay.
He is the one most like my mom.
Like
and
helped her, hold you down.
I can see how
that could
he
have
has a lot.
him as well.
Yeah, he has a lot of he's
demons.
Almost like my mom in that
that's so
sense.
sad.
That he's very bitter, very angry, very prideful, and will not talk to me. And it's partly my fault too, because I call him out on some things, and
I mean,
I don't necessarily say it right sometimes, and so
it's unfortunate.
And because you helped raise those kids, right?
Yeah, helped raise them, but they don't see that part.
Yeah,
they see my mother as, oh, she was our mom and our dad, and we praise her. They don't remember what I did, what I really went through, they don't understand. And I think being boys, I think they don't understand as well as like my sister. She talks to me now and says, "Oh, you went through this. I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry you had to be my mom, and you had to go through all of this." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's okay." But she's barely started after having children. She started to notice like, oh, what I went through, what I shouldn't have gone through, how it's not right.
Did she live with your mom like completely until?
No, she got kicked out too.
Oh.
So after about maybe 6 months after I got kicked out, she got kicked out too.
Did the boys ever get kicked out?
No, the boys were too little to be kicked out. They were well, even my sister was too young to be kicked out, but she got kicked out nevertheless. The boys, she took them all to Las Vegas after to live there. And with the boys, she was completely different. With the girls,
she didn't have to like fight for male attention with the
too.
boys. And
that's true too. With the boys though, she turned 180 in Las Vegas. She let them try drugs. She let them do like it was like complete, like all of her true self came out with the boys, and that messed them up a lot. Yeah.
Well, girls do hold other girls accountable, I guess. Like, I mean, my daughter is a mirror to me a lot of the time. My son is a little bit less judgy on me, but
I'm so thankful I have boys.
But for your mom to compete for like a men's affection of you, that's completely different of a situation. There's definitely a twist.
Yeah, that was a crazy.
That was like, I just can't even.
Part in my life. And the end to that story, sadly, thankfully, but sadly at the same time, even though I never spoke to him over the last 20 years, but he passed away in 2020.
Really?
He was crazy. So he loved motorcycles and he crashed and died. And I had to call and tell my family, because the one aunt that told me knew, because she's still in contact with his family. So she called me to tell me, and then I had to call my mom and my brothers, and they're closer to him. And it's just an awkward, crazy story.
That is so crazy. Do you think it's gone in God's will that you'll ever, like, your mom will ever reconcile with you, or you'll ever reconcile with your mom?
Or do you feel you need to?
Or do you feel you need to?
That has been a crazy journey, because very recently, I'm telling you, I've had spiritual warfare these past couple weeks leading up to.
I'm sorry.
To this. No.
I'm sorry.
If it's happening, it's because we're doing something right.
That's true. He feels threatened.
I love that.
Yeah. If you're doing nothing, then nothing's ever going to happen.
Right.
But
that's true.
You expect opposition, embrace sacrifice, and enjoy the challenge. Right. I've heard that somewhere.
Sounds good to me.
Can you write that down?
Write that down, please.
Oh, wait, no, I have it recorded.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was listening to this message, and I've heard of soul ties before, but I never really connected that with my mother. And the way I heard it made me realize that I might have it. So I said the prayer that they suggested, and man, oh man, did I feel this weight lift, because like I said in my story, I wanted my mom. I wanted her so badly growing up. And I knew that that as a mother, that's what you should do. You should take care of your children. You should want them. You should protect them. Like, how did I know that? I don't know. God just put that in us all, or most of us. So when I said that prayer, I literally, when I stood up and I walked, I felt like I was floating, because this weight of unholy connection to my mom was lifted off. And part of that was because I finally realized that it's not just that I wanted my mother, but it's also all of her burdens and anger and insecurities and unhealthiness, if that's even a word. I hold that too, because I love her so much that I see it and I feel it. And so whenever I think about her, it was like a burden on me. And I was finally able to release that, like, may the cross of Jesus, may his blood come between those burdens and me. Don't let a cross anymore. When I think of her, don't let that come to me, because Jesus is taking that. You don't need to take that. You can release her. And so that's what has been happening the past week. Like, I'm just releasing her to the Lord, where it's like, when I think of her, I don't feel like, oh, wait a minute. How come I just feel like she's another person almost. I don't feel like she's like this person that I need to be connected to, that I need to carry her burdens, that I feel bad about or hurt about as much anymore. But of course, Satan uses things like my dad's been calling me saying, I paid her this month this much. Did she give you any? And I know that's Satan.
Yeah.
So he's still going to
try to keep that
connection. And I'm keep releasing it to the Lord, releasing it. And I think personally, it's going to be a lifelong struggle for me.
Yeah.
Like I said at the women's study, I said, I realized this season that my mother is my thorn in the flesh. I don't think it's going to go away. And I don't know why. Maybe the Lord has been using that my whole life to keep me attracted to him.
Yeah.
Like a reminder why you need him.
Yeah.
Constant.
But you're like, can we have a break though?
Yeah.
Can we take a break?
Yeah.
So you have a daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think back to how your mom was with you, your mom gave birth to you 2 days before her 18th birthday. She left you with your grandmother, for the early years. Like, could you picture that with your daughter?
Not at all. So that's another thing. It's like with my daughter, it's a whole new healing side of the story, because now I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what you have to go through as a mom. Even my sister calls me the other day and goes, who trimmed our fingernails? Like, we have to trim our babies, our children's,
and they grow fast.
Yeah. Like,
It's
who did that for us? And you
Right.
think like, did my grandma, did my uncle, did my, little
Little
details like
things.
that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, my mom didn't do that for me. She wasn't there. She barely talked to me. But I could not imagine ever doing what I went through, having my daughter go through that. I could never, even if I say this now, I hope it's true, but if she's a teenager and does something terrible and doesn't want to talk to me, I'm going to pursue her. My mother has never done that to us.
Yeah.
Never. And as a mother, I would think you pursue your children.
Right.
You keep that bridge open always, because they just might come to the light and might want you. You don't close it. You don't make them like an enemy as if they're a girlfriend of yours or a neighbor of yours, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's been shocking to me.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me that I was so nervous having for sure a daughter, but becoming a mom with my son, because I didn't have a relationship with my mom or my dad. I mean, I had great extended family, grandparents, uncles, and aunts, but I'm like, how do I do this? Like, I don't know. And luckily at that time, my mother-in-law was very Christian, but just was able to fill in my nervous times of like, I'm so scared. Like, I don't know how to do this, But I agree. It was like, I think I knew it back in the time. Like, don't you want better for your children? Like, when your mom's doing something to you and you're like, wait, you want better for me? Like, you're telling me I can't do anything because you didn't have it. Well, you had a kid at 16. Like, I'm being a normal teenager, but you don't want better for me. So, I mean, for some reason I knew it then, but then to go through and I'm like, wow, like, I would do anything for my children. I would die for them.
Exactly.
I wouldn't, like you say, turn your back. Like, I want something different.
Yes.
But it's still, trials along the way. But again, like, you can't walk in someone's shoes. Like, they have their reasons for being how they are.
Yes.
I think there are stupid reasons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think any, beat your daughter, to have one of your other children hold down your daughter so you can beat the crap out of her and verbally assault her. And was there drugs? Do you
I've
think?
suspected, I've talked to my aunts, the youngest aunt that I grew up with a couple, maybe 4 months ago. And I asked her that question, do you think there were drugs? She says, yeah, probably, most likely. Because I just
so
feel
like, how can,
so off.
Maybe the church was dealing drugs.
Maybe that. No, I wouldn't
Maybe
be
it was a
surprised.
front.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if that boyfriend of mine that she kept
Right.
around,
Right.
if he was
Yeah.
a drug dealer. Because now, like, I think of things, I'm
and
like,
not
hey,
won the lottery, maybe.
No, this is
no,
a different one.
no,
Oh,
that's
that's
a different one.
different.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a different,
Okay.
That's a
different
different
boyfriend.
one.
Come
Okay.
on.
But I also know of a little tiny bit of her history, which was also
Oh.
terrible.
Learned behavior, maybe not learned,
Well,
but
Experiences.
I mean, I think it's always not always. Sorry, I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but it's always not dealing with your own trauma,
Yeah.
and so you're continuing the generational,
yeah,
you know, trauma versus finding a way for healing and a better way of living. You're continuing that dysfunction.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I knew praying to God, just let me out of this house, because once I can make my own decisions, I can do better than these people.
and I'm gonna show
And
them.
why did I know
Yeah.
that? I wasn't raised. Now remembering I had Jesus on my wall. I went to church, Catholic church, with neighbors that would just take me so my mom could get away, you know, have someone take care of me. But I mean, those little deposits, you know,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, that's trauma. That's trauma that you have to work through.
Yeah.
And someone has to help you with that.
So, do you have an anchor verse?
I was thinking about that, you know, the last couple of weeks. I'm like, what am I going to say?
I feel like I
What
put
am I
so
gonna
much
say?
stress on you.
No, it's because it gets me to think, is there an anchor verse? Is there not? And I went from going, no, not really. You know, there's always this song or this verse that helps in that season.
Or how about a song? I mean, I'll take anything.
Yeah, there's hymns that, you know, that I love and all of that. But I wanted to go back to that verse that I said it wrong in the recording, by the way. It wasn't
Okay.
Hebrews 1:6, Ephesians 1:6. That said
The armor of God. Is it? The
no,
armor?
mine was the one that says, now be sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Because that's the verse I heard in my college campus when the Holy Spirit was speaking to me and kind of telling me, like, hey, you're mine. Don't forget, I'm
Yeah.
still here. And so I've been kind of thinking about that verse again this week, and I come to think, and then the message today kind of also resonated with that at church today.
I'll have to watch that online.
Yeah, it's pretty much saying, like, God is still working on you. You're not done. It's continual. Even when you think that maybe you're done or he's done, no, he's not. You're not going to be done until your last breath, until you see him face to face again. That's when you're done. So God is full of grace. God is full of ways that we don't expect, super unexpected. A lot of twists and turns, a lot of challenges, some easy things that seem like they're easy, but then you fall on your face and realize, oops, no. And that's okay. God can use anything and everything and anybody to help you see again, to guide you again, or he can use you. And even if you're not walking right with the Lord, he can use you to speak to people. And, you know, it's just God uses people for people, and he won't be done. So I guess I'll stick with that verse.
Okay.
And what is your definition of God?
My definition of God is the one who made everything, the one who breathed life into everything, the one that loves everything, the one that is so unlike what we think he is that it takes us a whole lifetime to discover it. And then when we see him, you still didn't expect that. Like, it was so much more amazing. That's who God is.
I love that. And I love how your face like lit up.
Lit up.
Yeah.
Totally lit up.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a light and a great smile anyways,
Yeah.
but it just intensified.
It did. It was like, ding. Do you have anything else you want to add? Any one-liners that you feel?
What one-liner, Lord?
Feed her the one-liner.
Just, I guess, keep forgiving in your
Yeah.
life. That's a constant theme in my life, because those things will come up again. and the hatred will pop up again. Satan will use something to remind you of something again, or somebody will remind you of that again, or you'll have a new memory that you didn't even know you had, but you'll have it, and it's just, again, part of the road and the healing process. Keep forgiving, keep looking to the Lord, don't give up, and don't do it on your own. Go to church, get support groups, keep scripture in your heart, keep songs in your heart. Those are the things that are going to help.
Yeah. The forgiving thing is kind of like, I worked really hard to forgive my sister, and I actually have cut off contact with her, and I'm doing pretty good. Like before, it was like I'd constantly like, well, I'm going to reach out, but then I know the results will still be the same. And so when I'm finally like, I forgive her. I forgive her. And then we go through, and then somebody's like, oh, how's your sister? I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it like starts turning again.
Like your mother.
Yeah. And it's like, come on, no. Then I'm like, okay, back to square one, God. Like, I get it, and then 6 months down the road, somebody's like, oh, I'm like, I don't have a sister. Like, can we just say that?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right.
Well, thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
My pleasure, ladies.
I appreciate it.
Can you hear me, Lord, and can you lead me to the light?
Do you have a story to share? You can reach out directly to us at lostsheepfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Want to know when the next episode is available? Subscribe on our website, lostsheepfoundpodcast.com, or follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music.
Could never be repaid. When the heat wave starts to break and the ice and snow melts away, when the tears we've cried have all run dry, we find the rainbows in. We'll be walking in the sunshine with him.